Welcome to Monday Next. We're two siblings with two different businesses, but we only have honest conversations.
I'm Scott Monday, founder of Kitchen and Bath Crate, where we've turned construction chaos into systematic excellence with guaranteed timelines and results that break every industry rule.
And I'm Meredith Monday Schwartz, the CEO of Here Comes the Guide, a wedding venue platform built on relationships instead of commissions, run by an all-women team that proves heart-forward business practices actually work.
We're siblings who've spent 15 years challenging each other's business philosophies, and we finally decided to hit record.
No guests, no fluff, just the conversations that we'd be having anyway. But now you get to listen in. Whether you're team heart forward or team systems first, we're here to show you that business doesn't have to be boring, generic, or divorced from real life.
This is Monday Next. All right, Mayor, so excited to record this episode, but I have to be honest with you. I could be honest with you, right?
Yep, please.
So there's been a little bit of dread in me about this episode because I feel a little bit like I'm interviewing Tom Brady about playing quarterback or something like that, because today we're talking about remote work. And I can still remember when you took your entire company remote many years ago, and I still sit here with, sawdust in my hair because we do like real life work each day in people's homes and in an office and at a fabrication facility. But man, this is a topic that I think you're going to bring a few things that I am going to kind of sit at your feet and listen to.
I am very interested in this topic. I'm very interested in, of course, talking about how we make it work. Here Comes the Guide. But I'm equally interested in how you feel about it, what it looks like to you from your end, and the different kind of thought exercises that you've done. So I have some questions for you about this topic too.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because, correct me if I'm wrong, but at least from my perspective, this whole topic of remote work really changed in 2020 with COVID. It was like it went from this thing that was being tested and being used occasionally to everybody was all in. And quite frankly, there's some really crappy execution of remote work management during that window and even to this day.
Absolutely. It is one of those things that makes me want to tear my hair out because it is done badly so often. So yeah, I want to get into it for sure.
Yeah, and I think for me, one thing that makes me very critical of it that I want to explore today with you is how do you manage a remote workforce? I feel like so many that I encounter and other business owners I talk with and even employees that are remote workers, quite frankly, they take advantage of the system. And I know that Here Comes the Guide, you execute every day on these types of things. And so I think we're going to dive deeply into what is it like from a management perspective, but then I'd also love to hear what your team's feedback is and what they struggle with maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Because both of those perspectives, I think there are people who take advantage. There are managers who overmanage, micromanage, and either one of those things is going to take the system, from being something that can work really, really well to being something that very frankly can just bring your business to a halt.
Yeah, totally. But before we get into it, I'd really like to start with our Monday moment of the week. So this is just a time where we share something, from this last week. It could be a personal win or a business win. But Meredith, what was your Monday moment of the week this last week?
Okay, so one of the things that's interesting about the wedding business that a lot of people don't know is that our big time of year in the wedding industry, most people think weddings, they automatically think June. The reality is there is one time of year where it's the equivalent of the retail season for regular stores, and that is what we call engagement season. And engagement season has a very specific timeline. It is the 24th of December, Christmas Eve, all the way through the 15th of February, the day after Valentine's Day. The vast majority of wedding-related businesses will make or break their entire year in that period of time. So it's really, really important. Now, at Here Comes the Guide, we make over 20% of our income for the year in the single month of December. Now, why is that? That's because venues know engagement season is coming. They've now finished their events for the year, and all of a sudden, as of December 1st, they turn their attention to, oh my gosh, I need to fill my calendar for 2026. So December is a really big month for Here Comes the Guide. It's a huge income month. It's really important that we make as much money as we can that month. Strike while the iron's hot. And also December is December. I don't know if this is the way it is in your business, but everyone has a little bit of holiday vacationitis, right? Like we all just have our attention going so many different ways. So one of the struggles that we've had, one of the challenges that we've had is how to make sure that we are as focused as possible, as productive in December as we possibly can be, but also manage around the fact that our people are people. They want to, be able to have a holiday season. So we basically have come up with a lot of ways of doing this. This is a place where we actually do put some limits on the amount of PTO that people can take in December. They still get tons of holiday time, but there are some limits as to how much additional time they can take off. So we put some structure around that, but we also do some things that are fun. And one of the most fun things that we do is something called tripwires. We wanted to figure out a way to make things kind of exciting for our sales staff, just a little bit fun. Exciting is too big a word. We wanted to make it just a little bit more interesting, but not make it something that's like competitive, right? We're always trying to work on our goals together. So we instituted tripwires. Basically, at the beginning of each week in December, our director of sales will choose 3 different dollar amounts that we think we're going to hit during that next week, like really specific dollar amounts, like $434.16, like something like that, really specific. And then when someone makes an invoice that takes us over that number, they hit the tripwire and they get something, a $250 gift certificate to Nordstrom's, or they get a brand new Le Creuset pot, or they get like some big something that they really, really want. So we try to do 3 of those a week, every single week in December. And it's always interesting to me that it's small. It's not life-changing in any way, shape, or form, but it's fun. It's fun for the person who wins. And I love seeing how people root for people and cheer for people when they do trip a tripwire. It's an interesting way to incentivize things.
So cool. Yes, this idea of gamifying
Right.
our activities with our team. I love that idea because, at the end of the day, sometimes, the roles we play, even the roles you and I play in our businesses, those can be a bit of a slog. But to have, like you said, those tripwires, that's a brilliant idea. These little games, these little milestones, these little things like that you can achieve. And I don't know, it just makes you kind of probably feel a little pep in your step when you hit one of those tripwires, I would imagine.
Yeah, it just makes it more fun. Everyone is focused on where are we vis-a-vis the goal that we want to hit. We want to hit $1 million in December. So everyone is very focused on where we are. Everyone's rooting for each other. Every time they make an invoice, they're like, maybe I'm going to trip a tripwire. It's just, it's an easy way to introduce just a little bit of interest in a month that means a lot to our bottom line. What about you? What was your Monday moment of the week?
It's funny. You and I both went with a seasonality theme. So for us, when we launched the newest business, Trinity Builder Solutions, literally 3 years ago, yeah, almost to the day, one of the reasons to launch it, it was in the commercial space, or it is in the commercial space. And a reason to launch it was to help level out the seasonality of residential remodeling. The primary business, kitchen and bath crate, residential remodeling. If you were to ask people to list the things that they'd rather not have going on in the month of December, a residential remodel for many people would be high on that list. So inevitably, December and to some extent January are our 2 slowest months of the year. So in launching Trinity Builder Solutions, which projects are forecast instead of 6 to 10 weeks out, projects are forecasted 6 to 18 months out, right? So we're able to see what's coming down the pipeline. And this December, huge milestone for the first time, once again, in 3 years, TBS actually did its job of leveling revenue significantly in December, which turned December from a significantly losing month actually into a positive. So it's really cool when you are an entrepreneur or a business owner and you think these things up in your head, these business ideas, and you launch a new business, and 3 years later, it's finally doing what you set out for it to do. Very gratifying. And the team loved seeing that too. The Kitchen and Bath Crate team has been rooting for the TBS team in that regard. So definitely a Monday moment from the week that made me proud and excited and optimistic about the future.
Well, good. And this is one of those things that here comes the guide. We call this a I love it when a plan comes together moment. And every time anyone says that to anyone else, like when we can see, like, man, that's something we've been working on, planning for, hoping for, all of that for a long time. Every single time we have one of those moments and we say it exactly like that, write that down. Every time you have a moment that's, I love it when a plan comes together, write it down, because that list is something when you, as a CEO or VP or wherever you are on your team, when you have those moments where you're like, am I bringing value? When you're just doubting your own abilities, being able to look at a list of, I love it when my plans come together, and to remember all the times that your plans have come together, like your idea went to execution, went to result, is really, really helpful. It can be a mojo changer. So every time someone does that, I'm always like, did you write it down? Write down that moment.
Yeah, great idea, because remembering those wins.
It's hard. Yeah. And they all blend together once you're past that moment of like, oh my gosh, we did it. And as a CEO, as a visionary, when you actually look at, okay, I woke up in the middle of the night and had that idea, and then we figured out how to make it happen 3 years ago, you got to capture that for sure.
Yeah, so really cool. And actually, the Monday moment gives me an opportunity to think through those wins from the previous week. So
Yeah.
it's sort of meta the way this all comes together. So thank you
So
for this idea.
maybe everybody should have a Monday moment at the beginning of their week.
Yeah, great. Like at your staff meeting. Great idea.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to dive into our newest section in a cringy way called Tool Time, but we're going to go with it. Meredith, we're going to go with Tool Time, and, screw ABC. They can come after us, cease and desist. I'll give them your address. They can send that letter.
It was my idea. I did coin it tool time.
For the record. Okay, so Tool Time, I'm taking a turn this week, and I'd like to share with our listeners about a financial operating system. But wait, stay with me. I know that sounds dull, but this one's really cool. So Profit First, it was originated by a guy named Michael Michalowicz, and I'd say it's probably a 10-year-old system. I heard about it in the parking lot of a gym as I was saying hello to a friend. He's like, hey, are you coming to Michael Michalowicz's event tonight? And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I have plans, can't make it. He's like, oh, no worries, but check out his book, Profit First. It will probably change your business life. I'm like, okay. So this is a guy I really respect. So sure enough, I got the book. And Meredith, this was in 2017, so 8 years ago. We've been running this system since. So just to sum it up, Profit First is a book, and you get the book and you just do what the book says. The premise is this: as owners and operators of businesses, one of the last things we tend to do is pay out the profits of the company. We leave it to last, right? In fact, if you look at the way a P&L statement is set up, profit is at the very end, right? You have the money in, then you have the money out, the money out, the money out, the money out, right? At the very end, whatever's left, hopefully there's something. That profit is at the end, right? But Profit First re-engineers that. It flips it on its head, and it says, listen, set up your financials to where when every dollar comes in, a portion of that is tucked away in the profit account. A portion of that is tucked away in the tax account. A portion of that is tucked away in your bonus pool, right? And so it's this idea of every dollar in gets put to work. And it's really changed the way that we run our financials, and it makes sure that the canary in the coal mine is telling us if we're not being adequately profitable, because if we take our profit out first, there's not money to pay the rest of things if you're not being adequately profitable. So that's the premise of Profit First. I'd highly recommend checking out the book. Meredith, I know you and I have talked about this in the past, but does this ring a bell, or do you even run a system kind of like this at all?
Well, I do run a system like this. As we talked about before, we're very profit focused because at the end of the year, we calculate out that profit and we share it out with everyone equally, right? I've always measured my efficacy as a CEO based on how profitable we are. That's actually the number at the end of every fiscal year that makes a lot of sense to me as a measure of my role as CEO. And like, how did we manage what came in and manage what came out? And then were we able to share out to everybody? I actually remember you telling me about this when we were driving up to Think Week and it was snowing, it was nighttime, and you were telling me about this. And I just remember the ardor with which you were telling me about this book and that it really made a lot of sense to you. I think there are so many businesses that are called businesses, but they make no profit. And I've always been like, but then if you don't make profit, are you a business? I mean, I understand big tech and, all of that, but I've always only been interested in running a business that was actually profitable. Like I wouldn't be a good CEO of a AI company because I'd be like, but we're so far in the red. I'm a profit focused individual.
Yeah, yeah, and 90% of what we see in the news are these companies that are startups or AI or things like that don't play by the same rules as SMBs, small and mid-sized businesses, which is who our audience is, who you and I are, and who we have a passion for helping. Profit First, check it out. I'd recommend the actual physical book because there's a lot to highlight and a lot to digest. But Meredith, here we go. Let's dive into this idea of a remote workforce. And once again, 2020 really changed things when it came to this idea. What was like this fancy, only a few companies can pull this off, and they usually do it poorly pre-2020, turned into a we're all in this together. And I can vividly remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, Meredith, the headquarters were in Berkeley, California, correct?
Yep. And actually, at Hopscotch, it is literally in our DNA to work from home because we started in our founder's home. So when I started work at Hopscotch, I started at Lynn's, like walked into her home. There were just three of us back in 1997. So the idea of working in a very casual home environment is very much in Here Comes the Guide's DNA. And so we actually began working remote when we had one of our top employees, her husband was in the military and they needed to move for his job. And so it was like, I either lose her or say, hey, it's totally okay if we figure out a way for you to do your work from Maryland. And we decided to do that. And it worked really, really well. That same employee is now my creative director. She's been with us all of those years. I think that was in 2005. In 2008, I started working from home 1 day a week. And that's when the experimentation really began, was in 2008. And right from the beginning, it made so much sense to me because I felt how much more productive I was when I was working from home. When we had an office in Berkeley, do not get it twisted. There was a lot that was super fun about working together. We had a lot of fun together. We have a lot of memories. There's no question that we were very bonded because we all saw each other together all day and we knew everything that was going on in everyone's lives. But when I worked from home, I could get more done in 7 hours than I could get done in 11 hours at the office.
Why is that? Walk me through the inefficiencies of the in-person work setup.
Well, I mean, obviously, besides the commute. So my commute was already an hour or more each way. So just talking about saving on the commute. Also, just when I was working from home, I just was very focused on exactly what I needed to do. And I was doing a lot of sales back at the time, sales to wedding venues. And I would just burn through my sales. And I got done with one call, I'd put it down, make my notes, move on to the next call. In the office, there's just a lot of collaborating going on, right? So I might get off that phone call and someone might come into my office. They might want to talk about something else. They might have had a business idea. They might want to say like, hey, by the way, I wanted to tell you how my date went last night, which I love that. There's just a lot of stuff. When I work from home, I'll take about 20 minutes for lunch. When I'm in the office, it was really easy to take an hour because we wanted to walk to the burrito place and we wanted to, and all of those things are super fun. But going back to my days at the law office when I started working as a paralegal right out of college, and I realized I could get so much more work done because I had to end my day on a certain time than my other colleagues who could work as many hours as they wanted to. The work expands to fit the time allowed, and conversations and collaboration expands to fit the people who were there and the time that's allowed. And I just could get a lot more done. So what happened was I started experimenting with it. Other people at Hopscotch started experimenting with it. Our founder was at the time still heading up the company, and she was always less comfortable with the idea of working from home. And she always had this idea that, like, well, if everyone's working from home, how will I know that they're getting their work done? Which is a primary question to answer. And so I set about starting in 2008 and then have refined for all of these years practices that really help us figure out how to how to measure the work that's actually getting done. So it's trust, but verify.
Right. So let me paint a little bit of a contrasting picture here, and then I want to dive into the recipe that makes remote work at Here Comes the Guide, because I have to imagine, Meredith, it takes a specific type of employee. It takes a specific home work environment. I imagine there's some must-haves about this because, and I think as I really dig into my concern around this topic, it's because I probably don't have a great grasp around what the must-haves are, and it makes me just throw my hands up and say, well, it's just not going to work. But I really want to dive into the recipe that's made it work at Here Comes the Guide, because it's been super successful for you financially, from a culture perspective. I mean, you literally can pull talent from across the world, or at least the US. I'm not quite sure if you've pulled from across the world yet. So let me just give you a brief contrast about how we're set up, because I would like your input on our remote work prospects potentially in the next 5 years. So we do kitchen and bathroom remodels, we do commercial countertop installations, and we manufacture commercial countertops in a fabrication facility on site. We have 12 of us in the office, ranging from those that lead to those that do administrative and financial work. And then we have another, depending on the season, 26 to 30 in the field, quote unquote, meaning on a job site, in a customer's home, or in our fabrication facility. There's 3 or 4 of us that work from home 1 or 2 days a week. And that is how we are set up. I just want to make sure that we conveyed the contrast between our two companies, so when I ask questions, the listener knows from whence they come, right? So what would you say, Meredith, is the remote work recipe? Let's start with from a management perspective, what has to be in place, and then from a team member's perspective, what has to be in place?
Okay, so to kind of put numbers on it, so there are 44 of us, and we're fully distributed. We have no office at all. And that's been the case since 2017. When we bought out our founder, we immediately got rid of our physical office and we moved to being completely remote. That was literally the first thing I did after I signed papers, is we turned in our 30 days to get out of our physical office, because it saved us so much money. So the must-haves, it absolutely starts with, for each role, you need to know very specifically what success looks like in that role. And that means there needs to be metrics that you can measure. You're not just going by feel, that show that the work is being done with the volume and the quality that you want it done. So it starts with that. You have to be able to measure it and not be relying on your own gut or what the employee says they're getting done, or worse, what I hear is people saying, well, they say that their butt's in the seat for 8 hours a day. I could not care less about butt in the seat time, as far as like, well, did you clock in at 8:01 or 8:05? Or were you sitting in your desk at 1:02? I am looking at, what do I need that role to accomplish? How much volume, how much of it, and the quality. What are the results that I'm looking for from that role? Then, once I have that really specifically, then it goes to hiring. We are very clear about what we're looking for. We're very clear that we're fully distributed, so it's remote. We are very clear that remote means if you have kids, there is full-time childcare for those kids. So we're very clear in early phone interview parts of our calls with people before I even get involved with anybody. we're saying things like, just so you understand, if you have kids, we're a great place to work if you're a working mom. That child has to have full-time childcare, because what we know for sure is the roles that we're filling, they can't be done while also taking care of little ones day to day. So we're super clear about that. And we're very clear that we have metrics that we measure that are all effort based. So we don't measure, like we said, we don't measure dollar amounts that they make for the company. We measure their output. What are they actually doing each day? And we're really clear about hiring people that are very self driven. We hire people that are harder on themselves than I could ever be. And I have multiple ways of finding that out in an interview. I have multiple questions that I ask, which I don't really want to specify here on the show, because any smart applicant is going to have Googled me and they're going to have gone and listened to everything that I've said
Yeah,
about
but
this.
you'd have to give them mad props for doing that and finding those questions
100%.
and gaming the system. That's like a
Yep.
woman after my own heart.
Well, yeah, one of the questions that I ask is, what did you do to prepare for this interview? And that's a really, really good question to ask, by the way, that everyone should ask.
If the answer isn't, I've listened to every episode of Monday Next, I think it's an immediate out the door.
Yeah, because you can Google us right now and you can find each of our names that we're talking about business and the way we run our businesses. So I have multiple questions that I ask them that I'm getting to the heart of, are you the kind of person that is so self-driven, that is harder on yourself than I could ever be? Because, as I've said before, the last thing I want to do, not because I don't want people to think of me as a micromanager, but because I have no desire to be managing people at that level. Like, if I'm going to hire you and I'm going to pay you good money to do work from home and have a 4-day work week and be a part of this awesome team, I'm not going to convince you to come in and do the work. You know what I mean? So it's really important to me in the hiring phase that we talk to people really clearly. We ask a lot of questions. Have you ever worked from home before? If the answer is no, we talk a lot about, like, hey, in the positions that you've had a lot of day-to-day interaction with people. That is something that some people really need. So we talk a lot about the issue of working for a fully distributed team, both as it has to do with what we expect from them, but also, is it going to be the right fit for the employee? So I think that those are some really important things to start with.
So, okay. So that gives me a great idea from a management perspective, which I love the first part of your answer, which is the metric, which is right back to the EOS, or traction. Everyone has a number. A principle of traction is this idea that without each person in your organization having a number by which they can understand if they are achieving success, it's very difficult to truly know if your team is succeeding or not. And it goes for them too. Great employees want to know what the number is. They want to know what success is, and it's up to us as managers to provide them with that information. So, Meredith, talk to me a little bit about some of the rituals, if you will. We'll call them rituals that make your remote work work. So I've heard you in the past mention things like a virtual office. I've heard you in the past mention retreats. I've heard you in the past mention some really cool tools and how you use them. So let's dive a little bit into the execution and how you level out those inherent weaknesses with a distributed workforce.
Okay, so let me kind of divide that into two parts. The first one, we're going to go back to tool time. So having some really, really good tools in your toolbox that everyone uses is really important. And so we use Dialpad. That's our voice over IP system. So it replaced our old PBX system, right? Which is how we all used to work when we were in one office. And so we use Dialpad. You can do text and you can do, obviously voice calls. Dialpad is excellent. All of our tools, we're on the Mac operating system, but we use all Google tools. So especially Google Calendar, that makes it really easy. We do all our meetings in Google Meet, which makes it really easy from a time zone perspective. We also have made the rule, nobody has to remember anyone's time zone. This was something that we found ourselves tripping over when we would go to schedule a meeting, and there was all of this confusion related to time zones. So we just have a company rule across the board. Whenever you talk about a time, you always put it in all the time zones. So if I'm going to say, like, hey, should we meet tomorrow at noon? I'm in the central time. I'm going to say, let's meet tomorrow at 10 a.m. / noon central time / 1 p.m. Eastern time. We just always do that because then everyone has their time there. And again, Google does a really good job of dealing with time zones in a way where it's very easy to not screw that up. So that's really important. We have used a virtual office for years now. For years, we used a virtual office called Sococo, SOCOCO. And now we just transferred to a new one, which does better with bigger teams called Gather. And a virtual office basically gives you exactly that. You get all of these options for setups for your quote unquote office. For the longest time, we had it was almost like a beach resort kind of office where everyone has their own offices in their, like, close to their team. And then we have like conference rooms and you could go to the beach when you're, anyway, it's very fun. And Gather, you have all of that where you can be like, oh, I'm in my cubicle really close to my team, but you also can design your own office. Like you can put plants on your desk and you can fully design your office. My team absolutely loves this element of Gather. But from a day-to-day perspective, what it does is you open it up in the morning and you automatically see everybody, their little avatar in their office. So you know who's there, who's working, who's not. And again, we don't use this from a management perspective. There's nobody on my team that's opening that up and being like, well, why isn't Julie at her seat? That's not how we use this at all. But we do use it for really quickly being able to, like, maybe an idea comes up and we're like, oh, let's pull Julie in on that. We'll knock on her door. If she's not on the phone, we will be allowed to knock on her door. And then we can jump into a Google Meet. It works with Google Meet. So you can automatically be in a meeting, like you've popped into a meeting room together. So we do a lot of that. So those are the tools that enable us to do the work really well. And then, of course, we have a bespoke database, which we've built in FileMaker Pro. We long ago decided that we were not going to move to like a Salesforce or anything like that because our database is so bespoke to Here Comes the Guide and the way that we do business. We've invested a lot in it. We continue to develop in it so that it is exactly what we need to measure the work that we're doing. And that's where we can measure things like the KPIs that measure success.
That's great. Those are some wonderful tools. You mentioned Google Workspace, which we are on as well. I think that is a fantastic operating system for email, calendar, all those types of things. Also, we've started using Google Spaces a lot, which is Google's Slack equivalent, and really have enjoyed that. In fact, we are rolling it out January 1 to where everybody in our organization, including the field, will have Google Workspace accounts and Google Spaces. Every one of our projects is set up as a Google Space, and the space can contain files, images. It has, in essence, a message thread that's ran through it. You can send emails to it, right from Gmail. You can send an email right to the thread. So a lot of technology that's already existed within Slack and other platforms that are great. And I imagine the switching cost is pretty significant. But for those that don't have something like that yet, if you're not on Slack or Discord and you're looking for a platform for communication and you're already in the Google ecosystem, I would highly recommend checking out Google Spaces. So Meredith, to contrast with Here Comes the Guide at Kitchen and Bath Crate, as I mentioned, at any given moment, our 40 or so team members are going to be all over Northern California, in an office, on a job site, in our fab shop, on a commercial job, in a customer's home, all those types of things. And so it's kind of funny as I was thinking about this, I don't really know if our company is the opposite of a remote workforce because not everyone is remote, but there's definitely some things that you've already mentioned that I'm picking up on that I think we can even utilize with our team that is distributed across job sites and things like that. Mayor, one of the criticisms of remote work And I want you to take off the manager hat and I want you to put on the team member hat. So I want you to put yourself in the shoes of one of your team members. The criticism is remote work means an opportunity to slack off. You mentioned a requirement that there is child care that is taking place if it is a parent that's on your team. How do you prevent the 3-hour lunches? How do you prevent the doing laundry or watching TV or these types of things that might pop up? Or really, do you care if the metrics are being hit?
Right. So let me say, I'm the first person to say, if I'm in a meeting, I am probably folding a load of laundry. Like, so absolutely, I've said this before, we're always cameras on. So that's something we've said from the beginning. Because we don't care if we've got makeup or a top knot, we're so casual. We'll come home from the gym and cruise into a meeting or whatever, but it's always cameras on because, again, if your camera's off, why are you on the call? We're on the call because we need to interact about this. We'll have people who have their laptop up on the counter and they'll be like, I'm sorry, I'm stirring, I just have to like stir the crock pot or I have to add, this ingredient or whatever. We'll be like, that's fine. We multitask so well and we will like stop and we'll have 5 minutes of crosstalk about regular garlic versus jarlic. So we ebb and flow really, really well around things like this. So I don't care if they fold a load of laundry. If someone is doing some task, like my production people, if they're doing a task where they're like getting 25 new venues online and it's kind of just like quiet, just get it done, slog through it kind of work. I hope you have a podcast on in the background. Like, let's make this work as enjoyable as it can possibly be. If you want to have a meeting and you want to be on your walking treadmill, fantastic. Get your steps in. The only thing I care about is that my people are invested in doing their job really, really well and that they're doing it the best that anybody could possibly do. So if whoever's in that seat, they're doing that job really well. But other than that, yeah, I don't care a lot about that other stuff. However, we have arrived at the place where we are now, where we have extraordinarily dialed in KPIs and measurements of success because we have had years of every now and then realizing that we had a person on a team that was stealing time, that was not working 8 hours in the day, that was, for whatever reason, the work that we were paying them to do was not getting done, whether it was a 3-hour lunch or I'm trying to do 2 jobs at once. We had to fire someone because we found out that was what was going on. But the reality is, in that case, the red flag, the beeping red light alarm was that the work itself wasn't being done. The work wasn't getting done. So as long as I know what the role requires, and I have a good sense, because we've had these roles for a long time, of how much should be being accomplished in the course of an 8-hour day, if that's not getting done, our systems now quickly help us identify that. Back in the day, it took us a really long time to figure that out. Now we're on it like within a week. And we start out with a check-in, like, hey, what's going on? I'm seeing kind of a dip in productivity. Let's talk about what's going on. So we don't start out from a place of you're in trouble. We start out from a place of curiosity and then we work from there. But back in the day, I mean, at one point years ago, we found out that someone had been stealing time for a year. And that just makes me want to tear my hair out.
Yeah. And I'd be foolish in not mentioning that as a person with a predominantly in-person workforce, time theft and clock in, clock out accuracy or inaccuracy have been a prominent challenge for us over the last 15 years. And so as much as people might like to throw darts at the remote workforce for such things, the in-person workforce struggles with that just as much.
Well, exactly. And the fact is that it's worked for us so well for so long that when we have had these blips where we've had to fire, I think, 4 people for things related to this issue, but over the course of many years and all of the benefits, like I always felt like I'm not going to let these 4 hooligans steal this from everybody else. This is a really nice thing, and I want us to be able to keep it. So we are going to figure out ways to be aware of it sooner and we can act on it. But I'm not going to take it away from everybody because these jackasses can't figure out their way to realize that they've got a good thing.
Yeah. And another thing that came through my mind about this topic is you and I attract a very different workforce. You and I both attract an amazing workforce and people that produce fantastic results in very different industries, doing very different jobs. Your team consists of highly relational and or knowledge workers, right? You have just an amazing army of people that service the venues and connect with those customers and also can generate the marketing and speak to the bride as well, which is that whole to customer element of your business that's a challenge. My world draws those that are frenetic to a certain extent. They like to build things, they like to fix things, they like to be going from this place to this place. They like to be solving problems. They like to be collaborating. They like to be huddling around the conference table over, burritos that no human should be eating in this large of quantity and collaborating about how to solve something. One person that comes to mind on my team is Jake, who runs Kitchen and Bath Crate. And his superpower is the ability to just be floating around like a flame jumper. They parachute into a wildfire situation and put out the flames. Mm-hmm. That's in Jake's DNA. It also probably would make Jake working at home after 48 hours, grabbing the nearest sharp object and right into the eye socket. That's probably what would happen with Jake. Mary, would you say that for companies that are built around a distributed workforce or companies that are built around in-person, there's just kind of a DNA or mix of personality types that you have to be able to go whole hog with this?
Yes, there's no question. We have created our workforce for the last coming up on 10 years based around people who are going to thrive in a fully distributed team. There's no question about that. It absolutely can be done. And we saw that in 2020 when all of a sudden people had to figure it out. And many of those companies decided that they now are deciding that they want to bring people back to work. But I was just reading a Reddit thread today where someone was saying, I honestly want some managers to explain to me the thinking. This was like a web development company. This employee was saying, there is nothing that I can do better at an office than I can do from home. And it makes me so much more loyal to this job. Like, it makes me not want to find another job. So like, what's the thinking? And I know the word collaboration is what always comes into play, but so often what collaboration ends up looking like to me is we're wasting time. Like, what are we doing? We can collaborate virtually. I can have just as much collaboration and ideating, brainstorming through a virtual meeting as I can have in person, but then I don't have the commute on either side of it. So one of the things I wanted to ask you is, obviously you guys have to have an office. You make a physical product in people's homes. You are remote in a different way, which is an interesting way to think about it. So there's a lot about what you do that does require multiple people being at one place at one time to do the work. Is there a part of you, if you didn't run that kind of company, how do you feel about the issue of remote work? Do you think, like, let's say you ran an accounting company, let's say an architecture firm. Do you think you would want to be fully remote? Or do you think that at the end of the day, you don't want to be working from home any more than Jake does?
That's an interesting question. So are you asking me personally or me as the leader of an organization?
Let's start with, I'm asking you personally. When I do this thought exercise for you, and I thought about this earlier today as we were preparing for this, I don't know that you would want to run a company where you worked from home every day. Like, I love working from home. I am at my best with a fully distributed team there as an individual.
So maybe an upcoming tool time We can talk about the Think Week concept. When I have my solo Think Weeks, which is just me with a list of 30,000 foot perspective projects for the company, when I go away for Think Week by myself down to Southern California, and I put myself into a cone of silence. But after 3 days, I am stir crazy and I'm needing to go, do, be, build, watch, observe, fix, all those things that are a little bit more difficult to do via remote. So I think my answer to your question, Meredith, is I like the idea of working remotely, but I think in actuality, I would struggle with it after a few weeks, would be my guess.
Yeah. And it is really individual. Not everybody is going to value the things that you get from being able to work from home. I think it's interesting too that a lot of people who talk about sort of bringing people back to work, a lot of them are men who want to get up and go out of the house and be at work, because if they're at work, then they're at work. That's all they have to focus on. And working from home, there is definitely a discipline that you have to have that is different when you have an office, because you have to be like, okay, I'm going to stop working at a certain time, or I'm going to close my laptop for a minute and take a few minutes to actually eat and step away from my full day of meetings or all of those other things. Or I'm not going to let myself get drawn down the rabbit hole of all the family related things that can happen, or, like managing when you have a spouse who's also at home. Maybe they're working, maybe they're not working. And how does that come into play with your day? So there's a lot of things that have to be figured out. Working from home doesn't solve every problem. But I think that there are really big benefits for people to get up and go to a place where they are not expected to do anything other than work. But there is a certain amount of privilege in that.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on hybrid remote work situations? Because really that's the only option I have. There has to physically be people on site. But I will say, Carrie, who I've worked with, she was employee number 1, so she's coming up on 15 years. Carrie, myself, McKenna, who does all of our initial screening of customers on the residential side. So she's in essence on the phone most of her day. There's a few of us that work from home on occasion. I do it 2 days a week. Carrie does it at least 1 day a week. McKenna does it as needed based on a few various criteria. Can hybrid work? And if you were counseling someone to consider this from a hybrid perspective, would you say, don't even try it? Or would you say, try it, but consider these types of tweaks to it?
Yeah, I mean, it was really the fact that we were able to do a hybrid model for a really long time that helped us work through a lot of the things that enabled us to move to fully distributed, right? So we had this where we would all work from home 1 day a week, and then it was 2 days a week, and then it was 3 days a week. And then for a really long time, like for 4 years, everyone worked in the office on Mondays. So we had 1 day a week. That's the day that we had our staff meeting. That's the day that, we would always bring lunch and everyone would plan to eat together at the same time. We would just know that anything that you needed to do in the office, that was the day that you did it. And that's kind of the perfect schedule. Now, obviously, we didn't want to continue doing that because we were paying a lot of money to only use our office on Mondays, which didn't make any sense from a cost perspective. But for a company like yours, Scott, where you have that ability to allow some of your roles to be able to have some of that freedom, if that's something that that person wants to do and that role can be done really well with that kind of freedom, I would allow as much freedom as I possibly could. Because anytime I can give my people something that value adds to their lives, I'm going to try to figure out a way to do that. If the company is winning where it needs to be winning. And then also it helps you figure out the whole work from home thing, right? Because you're going to run into things, you're going to fix them, you're going to say, okay, let's do that differently next time. But yeah, for as long as you're having set periods of time where people are expected to be in the office and those times are predictable so people can plan their work and their week around it. It's not like all of a sudden at 2 o'clock on a Thursday, you're like, I need everyone in the office in 45 minutes. But planned and predictable, I think it can work out really well. If I could just like snap my fingers and make it so that my whole team could work in an office together just on Mondays, I would absolutely do that because I would love to see their faces in person once a week. We do an annual retreat, and that time together where we take 4 days to spend together is really, really important. It gives us that ability to see each other in person, experience each other in person. And the longer time goes on, the more we realize how important that retreat is together.
What percentage of your team ends up attending? I can't imagine you get 100%, right, at an annual retreat with 44 people, but is it a pretty sizable percentage?
Right. So it is mandatory. And when people start with us, the dates of it really far in advance, like 8 or 9 months in advance, they'll know the date so that they can plan around it and plan for childcare and, all the things that they need to do for them to be gone. So we do make it mandatory. However, yes, there are times where someone is, within a month of having their baby where they can't travel. And so absolutely, we have those things happen. We had to make a lot of different scenarios for the years since COVID to make all of that work together. But we say that it's mandatory and that it's expected. But honestly, I don't think there's anybody that doesn't really, really, really look forward to that get together.
Yeah. Well, this has been really interesting. It's got my wheels spinning about ways we can apply these principles in the years ahead as the business grows. And one thing I really like about it is if you're willing to bring someone on in a remote type of scenario, your hiring pool, I mean, 100x, 300x, depending on where you can hire from. So just an immense different quantity of talent that you can pick from. And you're not looking for the best salesperson in the East Bay area of California. You're looking for her across the entire nation or perhaps even further than that, right?
Right. And what we've found is that the more we can hire people, like let's say we're hiring a salesperson, the more we can hire a person who's actually from the area that they are going to be selling to, even though they do that sales over the phone. Knowing the area, being from the area, having that like regional knowledge is a huge value add to the position. So being able to go out and say like, hey, we need a new New York salesperson and being able to hire from that area it's really helped us to make more money.
Yeah, I would imagine. So Meredith, Monday Next is about taking action, right? In fact, that's the origin of the name. What are you going to do Monday Next when you're back in the office after listening to this? What would be a small micro action that you'd recommend someone take if they're hearing this conversation and there's something about it that is kind of percolating in their mind?
The first thing I would say is if you have a team, whether it's a small team or a mid-sized team, and you know that there is an option for doing some work from home, whatever your business is, if you know that some of that could be done from home, my suggestion would be to say, is there a way that you could step your toe in, that you could say, everyone works from home on Thursdays, for example? Could you just step your toe in that? Just do the thought exercise. What would happen if I let everybody work from home on Thursdays? Would people be happy about it? What tools would they need? What would we need to change? What would I be concerned about? How could I allay those concerns? Like, do the thought exercise, because this does not have to be an all or nothing with most businesses. So I would say figure out where you are on that spectrum. And if you know this is something that your team would love, or you've always thought, I'd kind of like to experiment with it, let them know. And if you decide to do it, let them know it's an experiment. You can tell your people like, I'm not sure we're going to do this for a month. I have no idea if it's going to continue. So hold it loosely, people, but we'll never know if we don't try. Yeah. That would be the way that I would suggest people consider it.
Love it. Let's dive into some Monday Family Business. This is a segment where we talk about how some of these principles affect our home life, our family life, our personal life. So Meredith, on the topic of distance and geography, you and I obviously grew up in the same home together, and then we lived within Northern California together up until 2019 when you moved to Austin, Texas, and I remained where we grew up in Modesto, California. So how has that move kind of affected your relationships or changed your in-person time? How does this idea of being far away play into your family life and your relationships?
Well, first of all, I never would have been able to move to Austin if we weren't fully remote. So it's a really good example of the fact that one of the best things is that my people can move absolutely anywhere and they can still keep their job. And so that was a huge benefit to me to be able to do that, to keep my job and be able to move to a place we really wanted to be. And also, when we moved to Austin, I moved close to my best friend, who's also my COO. So we live 3 houses down from each other. And so we have the ability to collaborate a lot in person. We work out together in the morning. We always have some business related conversation as we go grab some breakfast on our way back, get ourselves really, really kind of like on the same page for the day. We know we're going to have lots of meetings together and separately. So that move has enabled me to have, ironically, some more in-person time with the member of the team that is probably most important that I have that in-person time with. So moving to Austin has been a really, really great thing. And our fully distributed team is the reason I could do it. Scott, when you now work from home a couple of days of the week, how hard a transition, or maybe it wasn't hard at all, was it for the rest of your family who were not used to you being home during the day to have you home and working from home? Like, was that easy or was that a struggle?
Definitely a struggle. My wife, Melissa, has been a stay-at-home mom since our oldest was born, and he just turned 19 this last year, right? So she's been at home for 19 years, and this is her domain. And all of a sudden, COVID came around, and all of a sudden, not only her husband, but her 3 kids were around all the time. And then when it got better and everybody went back, I'm like, hey, there's some parts of this that are really effective. I'm actually going to keep doing it 2 days a week. And I could see the look on her face was like, are you sure? Are you sure you don't want to go back full time every day?
Yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing for sure. Johnny and I have had lots of issues around this.
Yeah, and it's totally understandable because if a person is used to a certain setup throughout the day for 19 years, and all of a sudden flip the script on them, it's very understandable. So just like anything else in marriage, there had to be conversation. We had to figure out what worked and what didn't work. There's even some nuances that I have to figure out, like, I'm at home and the lawn guy comes at, Fridays at 10 o'clock and he has, only gas powered equipment that is, 3,000 decibels. And so how do I handle these conference calls or this recording I'm doing, right? So there's those nuances you have to work through. We're considering a elaborate remodel on our home, probably multi-year, thinking through how is that going to affect, in fact, I will not have a home office with any level of peace and quiet. So the types of questions that kind of play in behind the scenes when you work from home, right? The effect on the family for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the major reasons that we chose the home that we chose when we moved here to Austin was, thinking that through and saying, how can I have a space that is the way that I want it to be? And that, like, I didn't want to be in a bedroom. I wanted to have a devoted office, but I didn't want it to be something where I felt like it was in the middle of the house and where people were constantly going to be kind of needing me. And figuring out how to make that piece work is challenging. It takes a ton of discipline. It really, really does. And it takes teaching your kids. I mean, my teenager, he knows we have this rule. When I go into meeting, I will say, like, this is really kind of gross, but if I say to Jackson, and this has been true since COVID, when he was 8 years old, he was 8 when COVID hit, I would say, this is a blood or vomit meeting, which means that unless there is blood or vomit, you don't come get mom. And so if I said that to him, he needed to produce the effluvia in order to come get mom in a meeting like that. Now, not every meeting is like that, but we would have this shorthand that was that important. And so the same thing when I'm doing recordings or anything where we have to really let our family know if they're home, we have to let them know, like, hey, I'm doing something here where if you walk in the middle of it, there's going to be hell to pay. And I always go back to that hilarious COVID related video with that guy who was doing that CNN interview where the kid comes in and the wife comes tearing in after the kid. And it's just such a perfect We've all been there.
We're going to link that up in the show notes, which, by the way, we are spending some time on these show notes for you, making sure we link up all the resources. So don't be shy about visiting those if something in this conversation is something that you want to dive into further. So, Meredith, next week, vulnerability. That is the topic. Is vulnerability leadership? Is it a key part of leadership? Is it not? So you're going to come at it from a perspective of vulnerability as a superpower. And I'm going to come at it from a perspective of an Enneagram 5, which is rather reserved and not a real fan of being vulnerable. Now, I will say, Meredith, if you're vulnerable with your team, that's great. But I would challenge you to be vulnerable with 40 guys in construction sitting in front of you and see how that feels. A little bit different, but we're going to dive into that. You're going to tell me why I'm wrong. I'm going to tell you why you're wrong. And then we're going to high five and say good game and move on, right?
I am very much looking forward to that conversation, Scott, because this is a place where you and I are very, very different. That is a wrap on another Monday Next. I am so glad that we tackled this issue of remote work. It's one of the biggest questions that we get, Scott, and I appreciate your being willing to think it through, even for your very physical location kind of work.
Yeah, I've seen the benefit of it in my own work and Carrie's work and some others. And so it's definitely something that we're going to explore as we grow because I think it's necessary. I think it's the right thing to do. And I do think there's some incredible strength and value in it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we sign off, we want to make sure that you know where you can find us between episodes. You can find me. I'm at Meredith Monday Schwartz on Instagram. And if you have a desire to hear me talk more, but this time about books instead of business, you can join me on my book podcast, Currently Reading Podcast.
You can connect with me on Instagram and TikTok at Scott Monday, or even better, on my Substack at scottmonday.substack.com. There, I write about building businesses, changing culture, implementing AI, and applying systems to your family and even your personal life. And of course, you can follow the show at Monday Next Podcast on Instagram. That is our primary social platform. We'd love to see you there.
If you're enjoying these conversations, do us a favor and tell someone about the show. Word of mouth is the absolute best way for podcasts to grow.
And you can also help us out by rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts and sharing the show on your socials. That's a great way for us to get new listeners.
If you have thoughts on what we talked about today, whether you love the idea of being fully remote or you think work has to take place at the office, let us know. Hit us up in our direct messages. We love to hear from you.
And as we mentioned, next week, we're talking about vulnerability in leadership, which would be super interesting because it's Meredith's superpower and I'm at Enneagram 5, and it's actually the last thing I would ever want to talk about. So we're going to dive into it.
You're going to open up to your sister about being vulnerable. It's going to be so uncomfortable.
Can't wait. In fact, I'm already uncomfortable thinking about it.
All right. Until Monday Next, keep being audacious.